I have a problem. I don't feel anything. Or in other words, I have an alexithymia, that is difficulty to express and identify your emotions. If you ask me how I feel, I will not answer because I don't know how I feel. No matter if something good or bad happening, I can only perceive it by logic. Sometimes I want to feel something so bad, but I just can't. Most of the time there are no happiness or sadness for me, and it feels like living in emptiness sometimes, but I kind of used to it. I can't truly feel happiness or sadness though, when these emotions are extremely strong, like as if something unexpectedly bad or good happens, but there is nothing in between. If I experience emotions, they're usually very muted or even almost invisible. Usually I understand that I'm sad or anxious by noticing some other manifestations. It's hard to explain, but for example, I understood that I have a depression only by noticing at some point that it became harder and harder to wake up in the mornings, to work, and I have many negative thoughts, but I didn't experience sadness itself. I've been denying that it is a depression because of it until I visited my psychiatrist. Only now I understand that my inability to work, loss of motivation and meaning in life, inability to do things that I used to love with all my heart is more than enough to indicate that I was sick. Currently I also have a bad angidania because of my medications, and together with alexithymia it makes me feel really empty. I literally feel nothing on any level. I mean, I used to like painting or skating before, but now everything feels just tasteless. This is really frustrating. The only two things left that make me feel at least something are food and animals. With my psychotherapist, we came to the conclusion that when I run, jump or move, I can feel my emotions like stronger. It may sound a little bit artificial, but it's really what works for me, if it makes sense. So when I understand that if I were a normal human being, I would feel at least something at a particular moment, I try not to strain myself and express my hidden emotions by moving my body, by jumping, running, if I feel like doing it. And then I can feel something more than just emptiness, and it makes the moment more alive. Well, alexithymia, it is one of the manifestations of autism, but people without autism can experience it too. It's not a diagnosis, it's just a trait, and it might be more severe or mild. But 50–70% of autistic people experience alexithymia, so I'm one of them. Having an alexithymia doesn't mean that I don't cry, even though I might be the rare person who never cried on psychotherapy. Well, I can cry, but very often I don't understand why I'm crying. I just understand that something is wrong. Also, lack of emotions doesn't mean indifference. I just perceive emotions a little bit differently. Only logically I can come up with what emotion I probably experience. Like really obvious things. When I dance and sing, I know that I'm happy, or if I'm crying, I know that I'm sad. But there are kind of nothing in between that I can describe. Since usually I don't feel emotions, I have a hard time showing emotions to people. That is also a big issue for me. As a human being, I feel a huge pressure to show emotions in society. At least because I don't want people to think that I don't like them, or I don't want them to feel bad in general. So I constantly thinking about emotions that I should express when I talk to people. I've been learning to express emotions in conversations for my whole life, but it's still really draining for me. Days or even weeks of rest are needed for me just to recharge after the simple communication. In addition, it distracts me from the conversation itself. I would more likely to focus on conversation, not on how I behave, but it become kind of habit and I can just get rid of it. I try to remind myself more and more just to relax when I communicate with my close friends and stop constantly controlling my facial expressions. The most challenging for me is to show joy when someone is giving me a gift or flowers, because I know that in these situations people are usually really emotional, and even if I like the present, even if it's something that I really wanted, it's just hard So I strive to show as much gratefulness as I can, even though it's hard for me and absolutely unnatural. And it doesn't mean that I'm not grateful, I really am, but it's all about my inability to express emotions. I would more likely just hug this person and enjoy the gift silently, but I don't want to make the person feel frustrated or the gift unwanted. When I have an emotion, I usually don't feel the emotion itself, but I feel the physical manifestation. For example, if I'm angry, I know that my heartbeat becomes faster and my hands are shaking. And in general, I pay more attention on what's happening with my body. I really can't tolerate injustice towards animals, and this is the only thing when I can say that I really feel the emotion of anger. I'm really sensitive to other living beings' pain, and I really can't stand seeing when someone is in pain. Well, as I said, now I experience anhedonia. Usually when I skate or do something that I like to do, I feel fulfillment. But recently I lost this ability. Well, this inability to feel happiness or even fulfillment is called anhedonia. Usually you experience anhedonia when you are depressed, when you don't feel the same passion for things you used to love doing. I'm not sure that I'm depressed right now. I'm kind of in this really strange state of mind right now that I really hope to be changed soon. I'm really afraid to change my medications because I started to work recently and I don't want to experience bad symptoms again if another medications won't work for me. Well, this is a long and not always pleasant path. Well, as I understand, the alexithymia also is affecting your imagination skills. Well, I always struggled being creative and imagining things. When I read books, I have a hard time imagining the environment. My imagination is so poor that when I read the description of apartment or house, I always imagine only like apartments and house that I know in real life, and they're like 2 apartments and 1 house. Also, I'm very afraid of all kinds of creative jobs. I know that being creative is very hard for me and creative tasks are really stressful to execute for me. If I would not have been a self-employed artist, I would more likely to be some mechanical worker like a 3D modeler or barista in a coffee shop. I know that it might be strange to hear it from artists, but my way of coming up with ideas for my art are really logical and structured. Of course, sometimes I have an idea just coming up in my head, but it doesn't happen really often. So I use references of animals and people or self-photography to come up with ideas for my artworks. Usually I create the concept in the process of work. I just gradually adding meanings and symbols to my works. Of course, I wish I had a brilliant imagination. It would make my life much more easier, but we always should work with what we have, and this is a part of me and I really try to accept it. Well, actually, I didn't realize that I have issues with emotions before I went to a psychiatrist. I even considered myself emotional because I loved to sing and dance when I was in a good mood. I understood that it's just an echolalia, my way to regulate myself. Singing just makes me feel better when I'm anxious or sad, and also it is my way to feel positive emotions better. I also considered myself emotional because I mixed it up with my sensitivity and anxiety. As an autistic person, I'm really sensitive both mentally and physically, especially to negativity. And I really didn't know that I have anything more to explore about myself, but I opened myself from lots of different perspectives. And it's so fascinating to explore my inner self from scratch. I have a new habit to observe my reactions. Even stressful situations is a reason to analyze my behavior. I always thought that I really understand and know myself, but in reality it wasn't true. There is always a place to grow, and I think I'm really too much about facts. Even talking about this topic, it's really hard to understand how to make the video fuller, because I love facts and I don't like excess information, and that's why I usually speak really short. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I told you a little bit about alexithymia and my experience, and I hope that this video was somehow helpful or interesting for you, and I will see you in my next videos. Bye bye!